eBay Motors is here for the ride. Remember when you first saw the potential? And then through some elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love, you transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a drive that's all your own? With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, exhaust kits, turbochargers, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. See ebaymotors.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. And Jack, we're getting closer to football season. I wouldn't say we have a jam-packed episode tonight, but it's closer to a jam-packed episode.
I mean, it's time to start previewing the opponents, start looking ahead to who JMU is facing, and that's Charlotte very first. So we got Hunter Bailey on from the Charlotte Observer to come on and chat with us. But first, we want to let you guys know that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From preseason, NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, you can head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with over 150 slots games. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And where this podcast is starting is with Hunter to talk a little Charlotte 49er football, because Bennett and I, we're not totally plugged in with what's happening down there in North Carolina. So we brought on Hunter. Hunter, how are you doing today?
Doing good, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on and talk about the 49ers. Jack's a big 49er believer. I'm more of a skeptic. But I was curious if you could take us through how they've looked in camp so far. I know they brought in a ton of transfers, especially power forward transfers.
Definitely. 71 new players on this team is kind of, it's a lot like last year too. Biff's first year. It felt like more last year, but a ton of new faces, kind of centering around quarterback Max Brown. He's a Florida transfer. That's what they're hoping for. That's what they invested in the NIL for. And looking at his film from Florida, watching him at camp so far for the Niners, he's been here since the spring. I think he's definitely a huge step up from where they were last year, which I think kind of leads to the believers aspect of where you could go with this team, because knowing Biff Poggi, they want to run the ball, open up the play action. But like I say, a ton of new faces. So seeing them gel together has been really interesting so far.
Yeah, I think it was Biff last year where was it the hat or a shirt that he made that just said run the damn ball or something like that? And he was really big on that. I mean, it may have played into the fact that at times Trexler Ivy, I think, was the starter who was started the year as the fourth string quarterback. But with Max Brown, what have you seen out of him to kind of give Charlotte fans some hope? And what have you seen out of him that enhances the quarterback room?
Definitely. So last year, you're right. Trexler and then Jalen Jones kind of split reps. And it was almost like two playbooks, man. Like one, if you see number 11 come on the field, you know it's probably a short pass. If it's number 4 back there, it's probably a quarterback run. Could bet pretty well on how to defend those. So having Max Brown, he can definitely use his legs, and he can push the ball down the field, which this team really hasn't had in the past couple seasons. And I think that's been what I've been most impressed by with him is his accuracy on the deep ball and then ability to kind of break the pocket. You guys know with like spring and then fall camp, you're not hitting the quarterbacks, especially the guy that's supposed to take you to this next level. So the reps aren't necessarily live, and it's been interesting when the whistle is blown and when it's not at times to know kind of how good he can be. And like, can he make that guy miss in the open field versus what it looks like at practice? But he definitely can use his legs, extend plays. And I think the offensive line is taking some time to adjust to that too. This is a whole new group. I think 4 power forward transfers surrounding Johnny King, the center who's returning. And they're kind of realizing, okay, it's not just 2 or 3 step drop, get the ball out. He can scramble, he can get outside the pocket and make some off schedule throws. And I think that will be the difference, a huge difference in this offense versus last year.
They still want to run, like you mentioned. Obviously, Max Brown can run, but what's the running back position look like? I know Biff, at least in some of the things I've heard, is pretty high on the group, which again includes a bunch of power 4 guys.
Yeah, definitely. So they brought in Cartavius Norton from Iowa State. He's kind of been the main. He'll get the first team reps split with Teron Kelman, who's back from last year. And then they have this guy, I kind of think he's the wild card in the room, is Hassan Wilson. He was a walk-on last year, but in the game against Memphis, it was like a heartbreaking loss for Charlotte. He rushed for like 198 yards and 3 touchdowns as coming into the season 5th or 6th on the depth chart, and then comes 2nd in program history with nearly 200 rushing yards. So he's back. He's had a really good camp. And then they have this true freshman from Tampa Tech, Rod Gainey Jr. I think he's going to be good. He's kind of working with the 3s now, but you can tell they all get a handful of reps in each group. It's just kind of seeing where the pieces fall. But definitely, I would say a much improved running back room and a really deep room that I feel like there's just so many good running backs coming out of high school.
Yeah.
A lot of the rooms are really deep through college football, but like I do feel good about this one versus last year.
You sound like a running backs don't matter type of guy. You can just go and replenish with high school.
I wouldn't say that. The main reason I feel good about this room is because I think they actually all do different things. There's like Norton is your more power back. He's 5'11", 225. If it's 3rd and 1, that's the guy that's in the game. Henry Rutledge is a guy I didn't mention, but he's first team All AAC in punt returning. He can also be used as like a scat back. And then totally blanking on his name, Rod Gainey Jr. is kind of like the speedster. He can really like has that breakaway speed. So I think they all have different skill sets, which makes me think there is a chance for this to be a super deep room.
Yeah. On the other side of the ball, sorry to interrupt, Bennett.
No, go ahead.
Ryan Osborne, the defensive coordinator, I mean, he had himself a pretty good defense despite them being on the field a lot last year. The offense never really holding up their side of the bargain, but that defense played extremely well game in and game out. What have you seen from the defensive side of the ball, and do you expect them to take a step forward defensively under Ryan Osborne?
Definitely. I think from where Charlotte was, basically since the Will Healy era started, has been really rough on defense most of the time. Like they were, I think, 131st out of, 133 teams now 2 years ago, and they climbed into the mid-50s this past year. So you feel really good about where they got to, but the biggest problem now is they're replacing both their inside linebackers, Nakai Hill-Green, who's at Colorado now, and then Demetrius Knight at South Carolina. And then Yabi Okianoma, who was, I guess, their best defensive end last year. He's graduated, moved on. So they're replacing their 3 top tacklers. So when you think about that initially, it's like, all right, who is it going to be? They've got some guys coming back, a lot of portal additions. I think this group can be as good as it was last year. I think improving much further would be tough just based off of kind of the linebacking room, because in my mind, you need a really good inside linebacker to play good defense. I'm an Eagles fan. It feels like they never have good inside linebackers, and it always pisses me off. So it's like, but yeah, I think how they replace that room, and then how Stone Handy, he was kind of the secondary guy on the edge last year, how he develops, like the coaches have been super high on him, so have the players. And today was actually his best day of practice in my mind so far. So how he continues to grow, and if he can wreck games and actually be that kind of top of the opponent scouting report guy, I think the defense can have that same type of success this year.
Interesting. Yeah, we're big Stone Handy believers, in large part due to his production, but then also he's got a mean headshot on the roster.
Yeah, he got a scary headshot on the roster.
Yeah, he's not one that you want to mess with. I'll go on record for that. Yeah.
So what do we think about expectations this year for Charlotte? I know they're picked toward the bottom of the American. You've got, you look at the betting markets, I don't think they're particularly high on them. Is a bowl game realistic? Is that sort of the goal? I guess what are the expectations internally for the team?
definitely. So I think, and this is probably the best way that I can put it, because when you look at their schedule, I think there's one just flat out gimme win, and that's Gardner Webb in week 3. Outside of that, it's pretty tough, right? JMU, big game. Then they're going to Carolina, going to Indiana, and then their their actual conference schedule. There's not like a Tulsa on there, or a Temple on there, or teams that you feel like really good about. I think the floor of this team is higher than last year. I'm still waiting to see what that ceiling looks like, because the receiver room is still a question. Who is going to be that guy? Like when it's 3rd and 10, who are you going to? But I definitely think a bowl game is attainable, but how they start the season is super important, because if you get to 1-4, like I say, you talk about JMU, Carolina, Indiana. If you go 0-3 in that span, and then you head to Rice and drop that game, you're sitting at that 1-4 mark. It's like, all right, you get into the losing the locker room type of part of the season. But if you get a couple of those games and you're sitting at 3-3 in that first bye week, you feel a little dangerous. So I think the floor of this group is much higher than last year. They have a real quarterback, and I think that inspires belief in a locker room. That was the biggest thing last year, guys, is like they would go 3 and out, and you knew that quarterback was out of the game and it was someone else's turn. And you just can't really, like, that doesn't inspire confidence in your team when the margin for error is so little. So having someone like Max, who you feel really good about, I think that will play towards improving the defense, because that was the deal last year. It's like they would go 3 and out and the defenses were right back, or they would throw a horrendous interception and the defense is on a short field. And it's like, it's hard to play complementary football if your offense can't even give the defense a breather, let alone score more than 17.5 points a game. So my thought on it is if the offense can get to 25 a game, which no bowl team in the AAC was under 25 a game last year. That's the threshold. If you can score that, yeah, bowl game them up. That would be super fun for the program. They need that. But, I mean, adding a touchdown to last year's total is tough in general, I guess, for any school. But I think how they fare, where that ceiling is going to be on Max Brown's shoulders. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what kind of made the defense so amazing last year, despite, I mean, not necessarily having like these gaudy numbers, but the offense never really held their weight last year. And if Max Brown can do that, that's what I'm really excited for. But Hunter, I got to know, will Jerry Richardson Stadium be rocking on August 31st? Because this is something Bennett and I have gone back and forth. I think it's going to be a huge home field advantage, where Bennett's like, they're 1-5 over the whatever. Like, they haven't really had that much success. But I don't know. I keep looking back to the 2021 Duke game.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is I guess last year South Carolina State was the only home game that they won. That was the opener. And it was a sellout for that game. That was Biff Poggi's first game. And he had came into Charlotte with a lot of claims, right? We're going to win the AAC. We're going to do a lot of stuff. And this year it's like the complete flip. He's not saying anything, which I think is good, right? You went out and you did all this talk last year and you were what you were. So now it's like, okay, how do you build on that? But as far as what the atmosphere will look like, yeah, man, I think people are really excited about Max Brown. They're really excited about some of the hires. They've got Dre Bly on staff as a defensive analyst. They've got Tim Brewster coming from North Carolina. They're saying and doing the right things. And then they've got Steve Wilkes, who just joined the program. It's like a super weird title. It's like voluntary advisor. So he's not technically on the staff, but he's still at the practices and stuff. But I mean, he was the interim head coach with the Panthers, was the DC for the San Francisco 49ers. Like, he's a reputable guy. People are excited about the team. So I definitely think it will be jumping. It'll definitely be sold out. I would be shocked if it wasn't.
I've been trying to tell Bennett.
I wasn't disputing a sellout. I just thought there could be some purple, but we'll see. I think it's a huge game for both teams, and I think Hunter did a nice job of phrasing it where, the direction of each team's season can change drastically based on week one's result.
And I always feel funny saying this, because it's like it is week one, but I really think that game will tell a lot about, especially like on Charlotte's end. I know JMU's new head coach, new quarterback, a lot of new faces. But for Charlotte's the same type of deal. And like I mentioned, the non-conference schedules are, you're going to North Carolina after this, and you're going to Indiana, who has Signetti now. So it's like, all right, they're definitely going to take a step forward. Can Charlotte make that game fun? Can they steal a win? That's I can't wait, guys. It's not that long.
No, it should be a great game. I'm looking forward to both sides. And yeah, Max Brown is a hell of a wild card when you've got a elite level quarterback that hasn't maybe shown it yet, but his traits are right there. So if he does click, I mean, Charlotte becomes obviously a much better team than maybe people expect.
No doubt. And I don't know. I think you mentioned him being the wild card. I keep going back to Stone Handy. You guys are right. His picture on there is scary, but he's got to be a game wrecker for them because the secondary is better.
Yeah,
definitely better. They've got guys in from quite a few Power 4 schools. But like I said, the inside linebacker and then what Handy can do off the edge because they need some the pass rush is going to make or break that defense.
Yeah, it should be. I'm very excited to see how Charlotte's season plays out. I'm excited to see how this game plays out. Bennett, do you have any other questions?
No, I guess the other thing that I think is really fascinating is Charlotte's early season schedule. I think JMU fans are going to actually pay a lot more attention to Charlotte after week 1, too, because they also play Carolina, I think 2 weeks before JMU does. They both play Gardner-Webb. And then I think Indiana, Charlotte's somewhat interesting with Cignetti. So it's interesting that they play each other and then also share a lot of commonalities, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That'll put every other opponent that you just mentioned is going to be watching that film like a hawk.
Yeah. It's going to be something. But Hunter, where can JMU fans follow along with you to get all the latest insights onto the 49er squad?
Definitely. So, all right, for the Charlotte Observer on Twitter @the Observer, and then my personal is Hunter_Bailey45. And then we do a podcast called the Highway 49 Podcast. So definitely check it out. Looking forward to this, man. It's like I say, it's not too much longer.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Hunter.
Definitely, guys. Take it easy.
See ya.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
All right, I'm telling you, man.
Good stuff, man.
I'm telling you, that it's going to be Jerry's house. I don't know if that's what they call it. Jerry Richard. I think they've actually tried to take some space away from Jerry Richardson, but it's going to be rocking.
I'm interested to see what the atmosphere is like. I don't doubt that Charlotte's got good fans, man. Their basketball student section's awesome. So I'm interested to see what it is. I also think JMU's crowd will be noticeable and could make an impact, at least for the team. I do think there will be a lot of purple. Daniel Merriman's getting in there saying a lot of JMU students are going as well.
Yeah, he said this game could be a 65-35 split of UNCC and JMU. I'm wondering if he's saying 65% JMU, but it's also not UNCC, Daniel. It is Charlotte.
He's saying Charlotte.
Oh,
be 65.
Okay.
Based on the order he put them.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, should be a great game.
I still need to see something, but yeah, let's see. I think do we want to do the hot take podcast tonight or do we want to push that a week? I don't know if you prepared hot takes.
I have not prepared for hot takes yet.
Let's do some hot takes in a season preview thing next week. We're going on the fly here, people. This is inside the baseball.
This is live planning. Next week, then will be our hot take purge. If you ever listen to the Ringer Fantasy Football Show, they do this before every year, before every season. They just say the hottest takes imaginable for that 1 hour of show. Then you cannot hold them accountable for what is said during the take purge. So that'll be next week.
A huge question / concern, which is very on brand for us. We sort of raised it last week. Are things too positive coming out of JMU camp?
Yes.
Because right now it seems like they're good at every position. They're practicing great. They love to compete. They're all best friends. Is that going to show up like that on August 31st? Because if they lose that game, that's a big air out of the balloon loss.
I'm kind of, and it's also like people have been giving me a hard time because I've been hyping up this Charlotte game of this really big game, tough road test. less so. It's not like you're going to Death Valley. It's not like you're going into like one of these really intense and hostile environments. But the issue is it's a road game with a team that's never played together before, with a new coaching staff who's never coached as a group at the FBS level. Like, and I'm not trying, like, they very well could go out and have a college football playoff type of season. On paper, they seem to have that talent. What's coming out of camp is it seems like they have the guys that could potentially come together and do that. But like, you need to have a cohesive locker room. You need to have a cohesive message. You need to be able to go on the road, go into Charlotte and take down the 49ers. And that's tough when it's completely new across the board. Road games are hard as it is. How are they going to come together? And if they lose that game, how do they then grow from that? Because it's a lot of air out of the balloon. And also, if you lose to Charlotte, that North Carolina game throws into question. And if you're sitting at 2 losses before the calendar flips to October, you're probably out of the college football playoff discussion.
I mean, I think you lose to Charlotte, I think you're out.
I think you could then run the table.
I guess the way I see it
At least
is
I
like,
did in college football 25.
I hear what you're saying. My concern is if you lose to Charlotte, I don't think Charlotte's ceiling is like 10 wins. I think it clicks and they win like 7. So like if you have a loss to Charlotte, I'm concerned. I think that would be a killer loss. And then if you lose to Charlotte, I don't think there's any chance you're winning at UNC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like disagreeing with that. Like, and that's why I think it is such a large game where there's so many things have to come together for that game. Daniel Merriman said on YouTube comments, the top end talent is certainly not the same as last year. They're deep, but how good some of their positions are definitely in question. I think that's valid. I mean, we talked about it. I am excited about the secondary, but at the same time, there are a lot of question marks on the secondary. Chauncey Logan should be good, but opposite of him, Jordan Taylor. I'm a huge Taylor fan, but now I'm just playing devil's advocate here. He was at Division II Tusculum a year ago. Your safeties from a year ago, just like there are questions back there. You got to assume that over the summer, over the offseason, they all grew, they all got better. We just haven't seen it on the field yet. I think I'm very interested to see how it all works out. And I think the fact that Charlotte's defense is so good is going to pose a problem for JMU's offense. I mean, this is the first time this offense is playing together against a really good Charlotte defense.
Would have loved, and obviously this isn't how it works, would have loved to flip the first 2 games. Would have loved the Gardner Webb Open followed by Charlotte. Like, get some rust off, get Dylan Morris some passes. You know what I mean? Like, that would have been nice. It's a little tough to have a game that you theoretically could lose week 1, not knowing anything. I think there's just so many unknowns for both teams.
It's also like the Bucknell game last year. If that had been UVA, we would have lost, and it wouldn't have been close. But if it was this year, maybe would have lost to Charlotte if that happens in the same way. But you're not losing to Gardner Webb.
Right. So, I mean, there's just question. I guess I'm just surprised, and maybe it's just from coming off of whatever it was, 5-6 years of Signetti, where he talked, like, he would just rag on people, like, unprompted, would be like, yeah, like, what a terrible practice for everyone involved. And sometimes he would say it just to fire them up, but it would give you this little, like, it would bring, almost like as a fan or covering the team, it would bring you back down to earth a little bit on what the team was. Like, he did that a ton after the UVA win going into Troy. And I think almost set it up where everyone on the outside believed that, like, they were decent chance they were going to lose to Troy. So then when they won, it was like this huge, oh my gosh, you just beat the defending conference juggernaut and you beat UVA. Incredible stuff. But this year, Chesney's talking like really positive, right? They just had their scrimmage. Really great takeaways from the scrimmage.
Yeah. I mean, you're right.
Like he says, your guy, Omarion Dollison, stood out at receiver, Yamir Knight.
Well, I also feel like there's these questions that are asked, whether it's by Daniel Merriman at the post-practice availability. Dave Riggert's asked some questions too, where it's even I've tried to ask some of the players questions of like, who's doing well? And the answers, shout out Chris Brooks, great media train. The whole AthCom staff has gotten them trained to be like, name as many names as possible. Because you asked
Yeah.
about how the quarterback play is shaping up, and Chesney's
Right.
like, Dylan Morris is out there really playing well. Alonzo Barnett, really good. Billy Atkins can sling it. All right, how are the wide receivers? Well, Cam Ross and Tajee Hudson, they're really solid, but OD had himself a really good game, and Dylan Williams continues to grow, and the speed shown by Ymir Knight is something that just every coach wants to have on their roster. Of course, I didn't memorize his quotes.
And none of those guys.
verbatim.
Well, none of those guys are supposed to be starting receivers.
Yeah, and it's just like, well, except for Tajee and Cam in my fake spiel
Right,
there.
right,
But
right.
like he just like it's all names, which is great. It gets everyone off the scent because then you're like, well, who should I be looking for? Where Kurt Signetti last year would have been like Omarion Dollison, bad.
Right. You just be like, the offensive line had 12 false starts. It's one of the most disappointing practices I've ever seen as a coach, and we don't know who our quarterback is, and we won't.
Right? Like
It's different, but I find it hard to believe that there are no negatives. He did mention a few pre-snap penalties in the scrimmage, but then he said Dollison was doing well, Ymir Knight. So, but are they too positive, or are they actually like sick?
I think it's not to get like way too armchair psychologist or whatever, but I feel like it's just Chesney's coaching style, where Signetti was a very negative feedback type of guy, where he figured out what made you
That's
mad.
true.
He wanted the guys to play off of anger, almost at him, where it seemed like he was the enemy and all of his coaches were like their friends. Just the way he would talk about it.
He did do a little good cop, bad cop stuff for sure.
Yeah, like you never really heard Signetti be like, wow, what a performance by this star player. It was almost like disparaging the star player at every turn, where it felt as if he figured out what button to press to make them mad to play the best. Where Chesney's like, kumbaya, let's come together. It's all positivity all the time. Both work. Chesney has a
I think Signetti would do it for everyone, and I think it worked for some of his players.
That's a good point. Jordan McLeod actually didn't work, then it did work.
I also think it was like horrible for Alonzo Barnett. Like that was probably the dumbest way you could have gone about handling his development.
Great point. That's actually a fantastic point. But like Signetti won a lot. It worked.
Oh yeah, he wins. He's a winner. Google him.
Chesney wins a lot. You don't have to Google him, but you can Google
You
Chesney.
can Google them both. There's a lot of wins there. They're both good coaches.
They're both great coaches with vastly different approaches. So I'm very intrigued to see how it plays out.
Me too. I want to see.
I guarantee you Chesney's not happy with every position group.
No, I'm sure he wants to develop some things. The other part that I'm having maybe a harder time grasping is some of the happiness. Like this is clearly the best team Bob Chesney's ever coached.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like they would beat up on a Holy Cross team. They're obviously better than Assumption and Salve Regina. They're better than the Johns Hopkins teams he was with. They're better than the team he played on at Dickinson. Like, is that part of it? That's like the fear that I'm the other side there is like, is there any concern if you're a JMU fan that some of this is just because like they're obviously like they'd be the number one team in the FCS?
I mean, I don't think so, but that is a genuine fear.
It's just hard to react to some of the positivity. I don't know what exactly it means, but part of me is thinking maybe they are really, really good. Daniel made a great point earlier this episode, though. The depth seems like it's phenomenal, but is the top end talent, right? You have Dollison, who's maybe fits better in the scheme this year. Ymir Knight maybe fits better in the scheme. Taylor Thompson definitely fits better in the scheme at tight end. A lot of different options at receiver. But like, would you trade that for Reggie Brown, Elijah Surratt, and Phoenix Sproles? And like not throw into anyone else? Or is the deep room better?
I'm so intrigued on how this all plays out.
A lot of questions.
Because you don't got Pons. You don't have a Pons type. You don't have a
Right.
Sunbelt. Milt Morris might be Sunbelt Player of the Year, but we just don't. Like, you had the Sunbelt Player of the Year on your roster. You had Reggie Brown, one of the best receivers in the Sunbelt a year ago. Phoenix Sproles, a great slot receiver. Elijah Surratt, a literal Big Ten starting receiver.
But we didn't know that going into the year.
You're right.
Surratt wasn't a starting receiver on the two deep against Bucknell. I don't think he was against UVA either. I think Hudson was. above him.
Yeah. Nathan commented, I think Chesney mentioned Jacob Thomas on how he has improved. My only hope is he is not as hesitant as he played last year. I think Jacob Thomas has made some comments about playing timid at times last year. He understands kind of where his mistakes were a year ago. I'm excited to see Jacob Thomas. I don't know why I can't pronounce the most simple last name. Jacob Thomas. I'm excited to see what he does this year. We got him after practice last week during player availability, which kind of tells me maybe that he's leaning towards being one of the kind of faces of the team almost. And Chesney's liking him enough to put him out in front of availability. Might be reading way too much into that, but that's what it kind of feels like, that he's at least slotted into the starting safety role. And it was interesting in that player availability, he said he really enjoys Kai Holmes playing next to him, which I think is a name we're going to be hearing a lot more this year based off of Thomas's, the coaching staff, and other players' comments about Kai Holmes.
Yeah, Kai Holmes is getting a lot of buzz in camp, like as a potential starting safety, which I did not expect coming into the summer, but the redshirt junior has a bunch of talent, dealt with injuries the last couple of years. Seems like he's playing really well. And Thomas, I would expect to be a starter too. And yeah, you mentioned it, was pretty like in post media availability. Spoke with Dave Rigger too, and was just like, at times I played scared last year, and now I'm not going to. I was like, oh, nice.
Yeah, growth.
That's good.
He clearly had the talent last year to start. What was that, as a redshirt freshman a year ago? Or even as a true freshman, whatever. I
think it might have been a sophomore or something like that. But yeah.
Let me look it up.
I think he's a junior now. But he was a walk-on. He played last year as a walk-on. I didn't realize. They didn't give him a scholarship at all.
Really?
Said that to Dave Rigger. So now he is on scholarship. Starting safety on a 11-win team. Walk-on.
Yeah, he's a junior. Why did I think he was a true freshman last year?
I don't think we heard about him at all as a true freshman. That's probably why, because it was kind of just like he was under the radar entirely.
Yeah.
Taylor Thompson, also very interesting conversation with Dave Rigger, where he mentioned the new coaching staff came in and he was basically like, I want you to evaluate me fairly and give me a new start, give me a chance. And looks like he might be the starting tight end. So he's done everything they've asked of him. Good receiver. Dealt with hamstring issues last year, which I didn't totally know or realize, but he said he was at like 220 last year, which does not really cut it for a Signetti tight end. Got himself up to 235, which apparently the coaches, including Chesney, said, like, you can't play tight end for us if you're not 235. So he's now 235.
He said,
but they don't seem like they mess around, the coaching staff. They seem like they'll give you a chance, but you also kind of have to do what they're asking you to do. He's playing well. Also a name that keeps coming up from what I've heard from various interviews that you guys have conducted and some Dave Rigger stuff. Josh Pfeiffer, tight end, redshirt freshman, kind of keeps getting some buzz. I think he might have a ton of game. I don't know if he breaks in this year with Kai Wright, Taylor Thompson, Logan Kyle all there, but sounds like there's a ton of like can do it all as a tight end. I think he's 6'6", 240. Really, he can run, catch, block, and now they all can block. Yeah, Daniel talking about Thompson putting on size is huge. He says he can finally be a factor in the run game, Taylor Thompson, which in the past he really wasn't. So that would obviously make you more willing or able to get on the field.
Yeah. If you watch Thompson highlights from his time during Charlotte, because he really didn't have any highlights during his first year with JMU, it was a lot of seam balls, crossers, quick action, things where he wasn't staying in to either block for the run game or wasn't really staying in to block in the passing game much. He was mostly used as part of a big part of the passing attack. All Conference USA freshman team. Was good when he was healthy. I think he was battling some injuries also as a sophomore before transferring ahead of last year.
He tore his ACL, yeah.
So he's battled through some injuries. Hopefully he's 100% healthy, because I think Daniel Merriman just said it. Thompson putting on size is huge for this offense. I also think that Taylor Thompson will just be big for the passing attack in general. If you can have a reliable tight end who can, catch 25 to 30 balls a year, get, over 500 yards or something like that, you're looking at a very vital piece of your offense.
I'll be honest, man, it's hard not to drink the Kool-Aid with the way they talk about each other this year.
Yeah.
Here's a question. Do you think the players knowing each other, like Taylor Thompson was saying last year, he might have not been able to name like at least half the defense, basically, like who they were. But now it says he pretty much knows everybody. Do we think that translates to Saturdays, or do you think that's just like a good student athlete experience, but maybe doesn't lead to wins?
I think it's the latter. I also think like you don't got to know the defense to win games if you're an offensive player. Like now he didn't know Jordan McLeod's name or Tyshawn Wyatt right on the edge of the line that he's lining up against. Yeah, that's probably bad. But I mean, I don't think you got to know that from like a wins and losses perspective. You don't have to know who's on defense. You don't got to look out there and be like, all right, Jacob Thomas is in. Torres Jones is in at linebacker. All right, cool. I don't think that matters. I think it does help to the student athlete experience, like knowing your teammates and having like actual relationships with them. That is much better.
I would also encourage people to listen to Taylor Thompson's interview with Dave Rigger, which was somewhat hilarious because he was talking about how like the practices and the energy is similar to like Will Healy at Charlotte, which I thought was funny. Chesney much more accomplished in terms of the win category, but he also mentioned he was asking him like why he transferred or why he got in the portal. And he was like, midway through the season, we lose to William and Mary, and that's not a good look. So the entire coaching staff gets fired. And I was like, you know what? Probably time for me to go elsewhere next year. I thought that was very funny.
That is, and he probably would not have fit into Biff Poggi's run the damn ball system.
No, not a good look, though, to lose to William and Mary. Very true.
Yeah, that 2020 was that 2022
I guess. Yeah.
That was a rough season.
It was.
Yeah. Only up from there for Charlotte.
Any other major scrimmage notes or standouts or anything? Any camp guys worth mentioning right now?
No, I don't think so. I think Kai Holmes is kind of the big one. Jordan Taylor's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
We hit on both of those guys. Jordan Taylor, you have not already watched WAD. Go to YouTube, Google, type in YouTube, Jordan Taylor Tusculum highlights. Dude's a dog. He makes a big hit at one point, stands over the guy as the play's still going on and starts trash talking. Probably not something you want to do in the Sun Belt because you probably will get flagged for that, but just shows his doggedness.
That's exactly right. He's got that dog in him, which we like.
Time. Big time. All right, where do you want to go from here?
I don't know. I mean, camp's the big one. It's plugging along. I'm interested to see how the season goes. Chesney mentioned that the kicking game, the field goal kickers look really good. They're hitting from 52, or somebody was, with ease during practice. It sounds like you were saying Noe looked pretty good from the warm-ups you watched, which are public info. So he looks like he could be a solid kicker. I think the special teams unit is exciting to me. I'm excited about them.
I'm very intrigued to who they go with punt returner.
Yeah, I am too. Noe is a dog.
Noe is a dog, apparently. Dog. Who do you think they're going to go punt returner? Who do you think they're going to put back there?
I was leaning towards Petaway, but I don't know if they have somebody else. Ymir Knight would make a lot of sense to me. Wayne Knight, one of the Knight brothers. What do you think?
Do you think Dollison has a shot as a wide receiver?
He could be. I mean, he's got the skills to do it. I was kind of surprised, honestly. He wasn't in the mix last year, given the fact they weren't using him on offense. And when they did use him on offense, it was a touchdown or a first down. But they were letting like Cheese catch all the punts. That didn't make sense.
Yeah, I think Signetti was just anti-moving the ball on punt returns or even kick returns. God, Dawson's just so quick, so fast.
Good for him to shine in the scrimmage because I hadn't heard much at all in camp until then, but he's a gamer, man.
I do have to tell you, because you brought up Wayne Knight, that Wayne Knight has exited the portal.
He's back. And he seems like he's actually having a decent camp from what I have heard.
Yeah, he is having a pretty solid camp. He's looking solid in the individual drills. He's looking really melding in well. I mean, that whole running back room looks
good,
very good with Adai. And we talk about it every time. The massive man of Joby Mallory just delivering punishing runs.
They seem very good. Like, I'm trying to find areas where they're not good, and I'm not sure I've been able to do it. So
We made it 38 minutes before Bennett cut out. So I chalked it up as a dub. A place I am worried about, but it might not matter that much for the first 2 games of the season. It really depends and hinges on how good Max Brown is going to be for Charlotte, their new starting quarterback from Florida. Hunter was talking about him. They really just need to get a touchdown more of that of their offense to be able to, he thinks, contend for a bowl. But that secondary is a question for me still, because that's really where I'm a little worried, is the secondary, because if the secondary can't find a solid rhythm, they can get gashed and things can kind of get out of whack. That's kind of my biggest worry. Do I think they have the talent? Yes. But like, so for the wide receiver side, right? We're always talking about they have so much potential on paper. They should be good. But Tajee Hudson, 9 career catches. Cam Ross struggled to stay healthy at UConn. If he's healthy, he's going to be a very good wide receiver. Then you got Dollison. You have Ymir Knight. You have Penny. You have all of these guys who have flashed at times and have looked really good. But to me, that's not as much of a worry, because the running game should be so good that it almost takes some pressure off of the passing game being good. For the secondary, I don't know how good the pass rush is going to be. I don't know how good that's all going to be. So then, will the secondary get tested? And will they pass that test? I have a little bit more worry on the secondary, but I've sound like a broken record. I've said this going into the season every year.
but I feel like the defensive line could be really good.
It could, but like last year was exceptional. Last year was Jalen Green was on pace to do something historic at the FBS level. And you had Kamara, and you had the double team eating in the middle, James Carpenter and Emmanuel Bush. Like that, the line last year was super good. Now they didn't have depth, but that top end talent that Daniel brought up a little bit ago was top end.
I think it's
So
going to look different.
I'm
like-
excited to see how Lyle Hemphill, who he predicates his entire defense on forcing turnovers.
He's a turnover boy.
Yeah. How does he generate a pass rush that gets a quarterback out of their rhythm into the passing turnover worthy plays?
That's a great point. That's what's going to be interesting, is like Brian Haynes, Kurt Signetti, they were like, what if we just didn't allow anyone to run ever? And that was their thing. Their thing was like sacks, tackles for loss, no running. But Lyle might be like, we're going to pick off a bunch of people. We're going to have corners with ball skills, which seems like they've actually built that this year, right? With Jordan Taylor, Chauncey Logan. You could have Spence in there. Some of these safeties, I think, have much better ball skills than last year, maybe outside of Meehan. Could be interesting. It could be an interesting new look, but very solid defense. The thing I like about the depth is last year, where it's like, if one of your corners wasn't doing well, it was like, well, that sucks because that's your corner. But this year it could be like, well, maybe we rotate in a corner. Maybe Chris Sheeran, UConn transfer, can play safety or corner. Maybe he comes in. Maybe you move Spence, if he's not playing corner, to corner. Maybe you move Ray Williams into the corner mode, probably less so than Sheeran and Spence. But you could play with where they're lining up, which I think gives you a little freedom to almost play the hot hand in the secondary sometimes.
Yeah. It could be as well a guy who's been showing some really good ball skills and individual drills as well as Justin Eaglin.
Yeah.
Could be a guy to watch out for, because Hemphill values ball skills. Like, if you're a great coverage corner,
man,
but can't catch,
yeah,
you might be benched for a guy who may have slightly, I don't know for sure, but slightly less cover skills, but better ball skills. So it'll be really interesting to see how that all shakes out. Eaglin has shown that he's the ability to catch in individual drills. So has Jordan Taylor. Jordan Taylor has a wide receiver like catch.
He's good
on the sideline. So
yeah. From Nathan, did Griffiths enter the portal? I saw a tweet he isn't practicing. Not from my understanding.
As far as I know, Griffiths is still with the team. Anything else?
No, I mean, We got one scrimmage left on Saturday. Almost game week. We're getting closer. Two deep, maybe starting to shake out a little bit. You can, we're gonna have a master guide coming out this week. JMU
Oh,
Sports
I
News
guess this is where we should. Before we have
plug
a
some
couple
stuff.
questions from the YouTube comments. If you're listening and you have any questions or comments or anything like that you want read on the podcast, drop them in now. Whether you're on Twitter, you can leave a reply to the live stream. It'll come up in our little feeder of comments. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment. We'll get to it. But first, we have to do some housekeeping things, pushing it to the end of the episode because we had Hunter on at the start. We didn't want to make him wait too long. First things first. Thank you to everyone who's bought us a coffee, a tea, a beer. That is absolutely awesome. Feel free to maybe buy us more. Maybe you want to get us another coffee because maybe we're a little low energy today. Go to buymeacoffee.com. That's buy me a coffee. It's scrolling along the bottom. .com/JMU Sports News. We'd appreciate anything and everything. And a deep thank you to everyone who has bought us a coffee so far. The comments on it, leave us a smile, give us a smile. There we go.
We don't.
But
care if you're smiling.
Yeah, leave us a smile. But thank you. That's buymeacoffee.com/JMU Sports News. Be sure to like and subscribe, whether on YouTube, whatever podcast app you're using, Apple Podcasts. Bennett just had a great conversation with Phil Steele earlier this week, or last week, because today's Monday.
Last week.
Phil Steele, that's up over on our YouTube. Phil Steele bullish, a little bullish on the old Dukes.
Bullish on the Duke Dogs.
It was funny because he was talking about how, typically when you see this much turnover in a team, they're bad the next year. But I don't think that's the case. And he's just like, I make this magazine and the historical trends tell me this team probably won't be as good as last year. But you know what? I disagree. And it's like, this sounds like a fan. I really love that.
He likes Chesney and the guys.
He does. And you want to tease our master guide coming out here soon?
Master guide coming out probably in the next few days. We're going to have our unpublished camp notes and all things that are allowed to be said. Don't worry, anyone. All things that are allowed to be said publicly. We are going to have our projected two deep. So this will be you, me, Daniel Merriman. So the brain power there, unbelievable. With our projected two deep, we're going to update this daily. So if things happen where it's like, oh, this guy looks like he's ready to be a starter. Boom, update. We will have good quotes in there, other analysis. It's going to be very detailed. We're excited to drop that soon.
Yeah, you can find that at buymeacoffee.com/JMU Sports News. Should be going up, I believe, what did we say, Thursday of this week?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe post media day.
Yeah, post media day. So you can actually check it out at buymeacoffee.com/JMU Sports News. We will charge for it. It'll be $5. You get you spend the $5. It'll all be on the page at buymeacoffee.com/JMU Sports News. It'll be like a digital product. You can buy it $5. You will get access to the link. It's either going to be a Google Doc or a special page on our website, whichever one it is. It will look nice. It'll be updated daily, as Bennett said. We ask that you please, once we do get it, please don't share the link or password to it. If you do, okay. But we don't appreciate that.
But okay.
But I mean, we're not going to sue you. We're not going to do anything like that. We just be sad little boys.
This is really for the sickos. This is a project for the sickos.
No, it's for everyone. Everyone can buy this.
No, everyone can buy it, but like if you're not a sicko, you're probably not buying it. There are a lot of sickos. If you're listening to this, you're probably a sicko, to be honest.
Yeah, especially at the 47-minute mark of this podcast.
Yeah, you're definitely a sicko.
Yeah. So that's all housekeeping stuff.
Yes.
Perfect. Couple questions we had come in from Nathan on YouTube. He asked, do you think JMU could have a bigger NIL collective next season and have some new guys, possible 4 stars, top 3-star recruits?
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
So I guess, how do you think the collective will play into like basketball, getting like this guy, a highly touted recruit, on campus for an official visit?
Yeah, the collective seems like it's doing a pretty darn good job. I think they're raising a decent amount of funding. I think the teams being good and the fans caring also matters, and you have that. So you got a good university, you have teams that are playing well, you have NIL funding that's probably more than your average group of 5, right? I think JMU is more competitive in NIL than, say, like Ball State.
Yes.
So they're able to attract some players that way. I'd say if they win like 8 or more games in football, go to a bowl game, maybe win a bowl game, I would expect them to continue having like really nice NIL trajectory, especially if they keep Chesney and have Chesney for year 2. The only way I think football could have an NIL like stall out was if they have like a dreadful don't make a bowl game kind of year.
It also helps that both Chesney and Spradlin, not only do they have these teams that they got that have extreme success, but they also both have bought into NIL.
Yes.
Where they are helping the Montpelier collective. They are giving access to their players. They themselves are giving access to themselves, and like, do whatever you got to take so we can make money for the collective. The collective, you wrote about this, also just released a bourbon, or will be releasing a bourbon. If you're a Montpelier collective donor already, I believe you have pre-order access.
Yeah.
And public sale will go up on August 19th. That's another way they're raising money for the collective. Can we talk about how much more aggressive Spradlin is in recruiting than Byington was? I think Byington was a portal boy.
I think Byington did a good job. I think it's hard to say that Spradlin is necessarily more aggressive, because if Byington had stayed after making an NCAA tournament and winning a game, I think his portal haul would have been really, really impressive. So it's a little easier to say after the fact, right? Because when you've not taken a team to the NIT, you've not taken a team to the NCAA tournament, maybe harder to have a crazy portal haul. But like Jalen Carey was a nice pickup, right? Keeping Terrence Edwards was a pretty huge deal. Having him in general on the roster is pretty huge. But like he did some really nice things in recruiting and in retention and in the portal. So I think Byington did a good job. Spradlin's building off that and doing a phenomenal job and probably getting more headlines. But some of that is because he's coming in after a coach that had a lot of success, I think.
Nathan also asked, is Chauncey Logan better with coverage this camp? Because last season he struggled in man coverage some. I would say that he's been looking very good. He's looked like freshman year Chauncey. I also think last year he was just kind of dealt a very tough hand where he was on an island, it seemed, a lot of times. I don't think coaching helped a lot, and Chauncey Logan was the recipient of some tough defensive looks and defensive shifts that probably put him on islands more often than he should have been.
Yeah, I think there's some stuff technique-wise that it sounds like he and the coaches both think he's improved on, which is important because he does have really good natural athleticism. So he's got the traits. Seems like he's taken to coaching well, and I would agree that they're probably going to give him like more safety help at times this year. So I would expect a better year from Chauncey, who wasn't like bad by any means last year, but he did have some plays where it was like, oh, he's way out of position. But he still did, given what they were asking him to do, I feel like he hung in maybe more than he gets credit for.
He's still probably a top end corner in the Sun Belt.
Yeah.
He's still a very good player. And probably the reason we saw so much of D'Angelo Pons last year was that because Chauncey Logan was covering the guy on the other side, and they were like, let's go after the freshman. Just so happened that the freshman was a freshman All-American and was an absolute baller and will be a Big Ten starter. But
right.
Probably some of the reason why Pons was putting up some really good numbers and was looking really good was because on the other side, they didn't want to test Chauncey Logan. So sometimes when you're not hearing a player's name, especially a corner, that means they're actually playing really, really good.
Definitely also tough too, right? He had maybe a little bit of a down year for him, and we're comparing him to a guy who got offers from like Auburn and Miami in the portal.
And he was beating him out to play field corner.
Right. Right. So Chauncey's potential, I think, is pretty sky high. I think he could have a huge year this year.
Chauncey for Heisman?
I think it's the Chauncey for Heisman is back. Yeah. We just need like an interception the first 2 weeks.
Maybe one in each game.
And like one of them goes for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like and he wins the starting punt return job.
Like just the insane run that Jimmy Moreland had a few years ago, where like he had like a pick six in like 4 straight games.
He was a lunatic, man.
Is he still on NFL rosters? Is he still hopping around NFL rosters? Last I heard he was on the Texans. He was on the
Houston Roughnecks in 2024. He spent a little time with the Jets last year. Yeah, that's right. He got injured with the Jets. So then he got released. But the Roughnecks released him. So he's still maybe battling for a UFL team. Maybe he'll have an NFL camp shot. Who knows?
Big news as well. Jalen Green cleared for all football activities. He is free to sign with an NFL team. This was kind of the holdup. We all, as JMU fans, were expecting maybe a team's going to take a late round flyer on him. He's going to be one of the first undrafted free agents signed immediately. We all probably overlooked, or at least Bennett and I, or maybe just me, overlooked the fact that he did have a devastating ACL or Achilles or something where he was laid up. I think he had to go under surgery, ACL, near like the end of the year. And draft time, he was like 4 months post-op, about maybe a little longer, 5 months. But finally, he's cleared for all football activities. So an NFL team will likely start working him out. Few NFL teams will likely start working him out. He'll get a shot in a training camp, kind of coming in a little late to the party, so probably won't.
I wonder if he gets like a practice squad stash by somebody, or if they wait a little longer, maybe he plays like the spring in that other league, UFL or something like that. And then, but yeah, I would think he starts to get more interest next year, and then this year, and then going into next year.
Yeah. So Jalen Green cleared. Will be fun to watch him if he lands on an NFL team. Isaac Ukwu with your Lions.
Got a sack in the first preseason game. That was exciting to see. So he's battling for a roster spot. Might be more of a practice squad candidate there. Ben DiNucci, similar spot now, right, with the Bills, battling for a roster spot.
We got it. I think it was an angry Bills fan in our comments, in our replies.
Yeah, don't call him the backup, please.
I said he's going to Buffalo to battle for the backup job.
Starting would have been egregious.
Yes, that would have been crazy. I said he's going there to battle for the backup job behind Josh Allen. The guy is third string at best. He's not battling for the backup job. Trubisky has that locked up. OMFG. Brother, if you are arguing that Trubisky's got nothing locked up.
DiNucci does have some pretty good pro credentials. Maybe they think of him more as like a practice squad guy, but my guess is like if he has a crazy good camp, like I don't know that Trubisky's like, oh my god, we gotta have him as our backup. Like he hasn't really proven himself at the NFL level to that extent.
And DiNucci's probably cheaper.
And he's shown some good stuff. He played pretty well in the XFL.
Yeah, and he was under Sean Payton last year with the Broncos for a bit.
Good quarterback. Good athleticism.
Would you have ever guessed Ben DiNucci would have been the longest NFL quarterback coming out of JMU?
Probably not, but I do like that we were saying that he was a good player and that fans were going a little crazy. There was a time there where people truly didn't believe that he could play at the FCS level, which was just bonkers.
That Colgate game did a lot for his reputation.
Yeah, it didn't help.
5 interceptions is never good. However, only 3 of them were his fault.
Yep, miscommunication on a route. One was like a Hail Mary that you were taking an interception there. Yeah, so I mean, the others.
Not to go down memory lane on that Colgate game, but real quick to go down memory lane on that Colgate game, that opening drive when they just like marched down the field, I was like, oh, this is going to be a 50-0 rout. Then they
That
never
was a
found success
strange
again.
matchup, man. Some of those FCS games are funny to look back on.
That was also a really cool stadium. Just like old school, like football.
No, it
you
was
know?
fun. It was like set like in the snow, basically, right? With like trees and in the snow.
Well, it helped that it did just snow.
Yeah, some snowballs were thrown. That's for sure.
By the Colgate student section. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise.
That's right.
All right. Anything else you got to add?
I don't think so. Hopefully we'll next time we're on here, we'll have some more camp storylines, some more scrimmage takeaways. We're getting close to an official 2 deep. We're getting close to game week. We are getting there.
Check out on our website, JMU football defensive breakdown, kind of some big takeaways and standouts from individual drills that Daniel Merriman has wrote over on JMUsportsnews.com. Bennett also wrote a really fun thinker of a piece, which conference would win an American Athletic Conference Sun Belt football challenge. What'd you find writing that? Would we as the Sun Belt win that, or would it just be depend on the team and when you get them and who's the other team type of thing?
Yeah, I did it matchups kind of based on preseason standings. I think it'd be cool if conferences did more of this. Like some of the matchups, it was like Memphis, App State, UTSA, Texas State, which is actually happening this year. And then I think we had JMU, Tulane, which would be sick. So I do wish there was a little more of this on JMU's future schedules. No offense to the MAC. Ball State, that's a game that'll happen this year for sure. But it would be kind of cool to have some of those cross conference. Like the Charlotte one's exciting, even though Charlotte's picked to finish like at the bottom of the AAC. There is some intrigue there playing a team in the AAC or the Mountain West, I think.
I agree. Also helps that Charlotte is like a hotbed for recruiting. A lot of alumni are in the area. Yeah. Makes for a good game. Also just a team that's just question marks across the board with it. It just makes for a fun one. A lot more fun than Ball State because
not a lot of connection there.
Yeah. All right. Well, for Bennett Conlon, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. Head on over to JMUsportsnews.com to check out everything we have going on over there. This has been the JMU Sports News Podcast presented by BetOnline. We'll be back next week. Until then, see ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.
Hey, it's Michelle Beadle. That's right, the Michelle Beadle. You're welcome. You love talking about sports. I love talking about sports. You know the only thing cooler than talking about sports? Sports! And right now, all your favorite sports are on Sirius XM. I'm talking every NFL game, every game from the NBA, NHL, MLB, every NASCAR race, golf major conference college sports, and all the top games in the WNBA. If it gets your heart pumping, it's on Sirius XM. So start your free trial of Sirius XM today. Visit SiriusXM.com/believe.